Well, hello there again. We're back at the old T-Bird, and as you can see, I have the inside of the trunk lid done. Everything is done. I even got those plugs painted. I bought new bolts for this one down here. I got to paint those, and then I got this one here. I'll paint those too, and then when I'm done, I'll undercoat from underneath. The bolts holding for these were missing, so that's why I had to buy these bolts down here. Come on, focus up here. Boy, I'll tell you what, white plays havoc with this camera. Anyway, we'll get the bolts that are being de-rusted right now. We'll get them out later on and get everything screwed down. Come on, focus. Man, white is rough on this camera. If you have a bloggy touch and it's doing this, now you know why. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. I just wanted to show you a little bit of progress. Today, we're going to take loose the leaf springs on both sides of the car. Now, will we get the leaf springs out? I don't know, but I'm going to take them loose, at least underneath the U-bolts, and then I'm going to try to jack up the axle. Initially, the idea was to drop the drive shaft and then go ahead and take loose the axle and then raise it up. The more I thought about that, that's not a good idea, because the front part of the axle is the what they call the pumpkin, the actual rear end housing with all the gears and everything. And what will happen is if I disconnect the drive shaft where it connects to the front of that, and this thing will, and then I loosen them up off the leaf springs, the axle and the rear end will do this number. It'll tip down on me, and I don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is disconnect them underneath here first, raise up the axle, disconnect the rear leaf spring bolts, lower the leaf springs down, and then go ahead and lower down the axle and disconnect the drive shaft. We'll do it in that order. Whether or not that works, I don't know, but I do know one thing. I got to move all these boards a little far forward because I got them up against each end of the leaf spring, the bracket, and also back in the back here. So now each of these 4 bolts, this is the U-bolt coming down, comes across the top, the front and the rear over there, and the front and the rear, the front and the rear over there, and the front and the rear here. First thing we have to do is clean off as much rust as we can with a wire brush. So I'm just going to go ahead and do what we can all the way around, clean around the nut, clean around the threads, particularly the threads, because once we get it cracked loose and it begins to come down, I'll be spraying it with this liquid wrench. That'll be on. That's not going to do much for getting it actually loose from the bracket. But, you know, once you get the nut moving down, you get a little oil on those threads. It does help the rest of the way. So let's do one. By the way, these are 3/4 inch. And I got my little breaker bar right here. After I spray it, let it sit for a few minutes. Just go ahead and put that baby on there and then see if I can't crack her loose. Let's see if we can do one. Let's do the one farthest away. They're usually the hardest. Well, the one in the rear came loose. I put the ratchet on it, switched over from the breaker bar and screwed it down 3 or 4 threads. She's doing good. But this one right here, the other side of this loop, you can see how rusty those U-bolts are. Boy, they got to go. Anyway, it won't budge. No matter what I do, I grab a hold of that breaker bar and it just will not budge. Well, what do we do about that? Well, how many times I got to tell you? We go to plan B. What we do with plan B is create more leverage. I took a socket, another deep socket, connected a couple of extensions together. We're going to slip the socket over the end of the breaker bar, and we're going to have a lot more leverage. So if you can see there, just take it like so. If you ever need a little leverage and you don't have a pipe or anything, this will normally work. And then you just hold the socket on the nut and pull out the end of it way out here. And it should just about crack anything loose. Alright, a few seconds ago it wouldn't budge at all. I put everything into it I had, which of course at my age isn't a whole lot. Now let's go. We've got that long leverage going for us. Let me use my right hand. Maybe I need to go get an even bigger bar. Oh, there we go. That took her loose. See how easy that was? Nothing to it. Nothing to it. Well, there we go. The first 2 are out. Piece of cake. I've already told you we're not going to be using them over again. There's a reason for that. First of all, there's a couple of reasons. These are really rusty. It's time for them to go. But primarily the reason is these are self-locking nuts that they put on there. They go up there and they tighten up as they go. One of the aspects of that happening is that it takes off some of the meat from the threads on the U-bolt. And then when I take them off again, that happens again. Now, it takes off a little bit going up and a little bit coming back, and it no longer makes them safe as far as actual nuts staying in place. So we can get new ones from Eaton Spring Company up in Detroit, which is where we'll be getting our leaf springs from also. So now I have some to measure. They offer several different sizes, but you can't get these on Rock Auto, and I don't know, the ones on Max Thunderbird seem kind of cheesy. None of them anymore have the flat area. See how it's flat at the top, round everywhere else. The newer ones are all just round all the way across. So these will be going. All right, let's get to the other side and get it done. Before we start on the other side, I want to look back at the one we just did, and you'll notice that the axle is sitting on top of the leaf spring. The modern cars have the axle on the bottom of the leaf spring, so if you were to take out those U-bolts, take out those nuts, the axle could fall down. And if your hand's underneath it or your leg's underneath it or something, just remember, the older cars, most of them had the leaf springs sitting on, the axle sitting on top of the leaf spring, but not all. But just make sure you kind of eyeball it, make sure where it's sitting before you start taking out, U-bolts and things like that. Instead of naming this car Pearline, I probably should have named it Inner Sanctum. Check this out. You younger guys have no idea what that means. Well, all four are out, and as you can see, this one right here just broke right off. Pretty brittle stuff. Alright, it is coffee time. The two nuts have been removed. By the way, those nuts, they had lock washers on them, and they are 11/16, okay? So now we have to figure out how to get that bar out of there. There's quite a bit of tension on that bar. It connects between the two all the way down to this one here. So I'll have to get the tension off a little bit so it'll slip off. Once it slips off, then I'll go to the other side and take the other one off exactly the same way. Well, all it took was a large screwdriver. I went in from this angle right here, caught the edge of that bar, tapped on it with a hammer, tap, 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 and then got up in here the best I could, tap, tap, tap. Next thing you know, she popped right loose. And here it is right here. That's what connects the two together. Alright, both shackle bars are off, and I'll tell you what, that was no easy chore. So what I'm going to do is I think I'll go ahead and it's getting late in the day and I am really worn out. Boy, my poor old muscles can't take much more of this. It's the next day after Thanksgiving. We had a really good dinner with our son and his wife and their son. As a matter of fact, his wife and their son is on their way up north to visit her mother the day after Thanksgiving, and our son took wifey downtown to do some shopping to get her out of the house, which was even a wonderful, great thing because she hasn't been out of the house in a couple of months. But she said she felt strong enough to go today and she wanted to go down shopping, and our son John said, come on, get in the car, we're going to make that happen. So while they're doing that, I'm out here messing around with the old T-Bird. Well, I discovered that in order to take loose the front part of the leaf spring, I have to drop the hanger. The hanger is what the leaf spring hangs onto, and it's the loop, and it has a thing that goes through it. I'll show it to you in the drawing later. And the hanger is held on with 4 bolts, and these are really big bolts. These are 13/16 is the head, really heavy, and they're difficult to get to. I was able to get to the 2 bottom ones, but the 2 top ones, I just can't get to them, so I had to jack up the car. I'm going to have to go under the car And of course that always makes me nervous, and I'm like a really nervous Nelly when it comes to time, you go under the car. I've always been that way. I guess that's why I'm still breathing. But for you young guys, one more time, I caution you, if you're going under a car, make double, triply, even more secure if you don't have a lift, that car's not going to fall on you. Now I've got boards piled right there. I've got one of my new jack stands there. I've got the new jack there holding it up. I have the other jack stand down there holding it up. And I have this jack, the old jack, holding it up. And I have the last jack stand holding it up. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ways from Sunday to keep that car from falling on me. You understand? Okay, you cannot put enough secure safety measures in a car when you're crawling underneath it. You've got to do that. You've got to make sure it's secure. And then, of course, I always kind of push the car to make sure it's not going to go anywhere, But that's the way it should be done. Who wants to be squashed by a 2-ton car? I sure don't. So I've got to get down underneath there and take out the 2 top bolts of that hanger. And when I do that, the hanger's bolted to the body of the car with these huge bolts. Once I crack them loose, they come out pretty easy. They're not rusted at all because it's been up, through the body of the car. But getting them loose is kind of rough. I'll have to get brand new lock washers when it comes time to put them back on. But the last 2 are giving me heartburn. They're the ones on top. Got to pull the entire hanger loose, and then we can on both sides. So I'm just going to do one today because it's getting pretty cold out here. It's been raining all day, and it's pretty chilly. So once I get the next 2 bolts out, that'll be it until tomorrow. Hopefully the temperature will be a little warmer, and I can hit the other side. All right, the 4 bolts are out. Here's 2 here, and the other 2 are over here. Boy, these are some big mammy jammies, I'm telling you. They weren't easy to get out, but we got them out. Tomorrow, I'll take loose I'll get the bolts out of the front hanger on the driver's side. And then, if everything goes smooth, I can drop I can raise the rear end up and drop down the leaf springs and get them out. And then I'll just have to shore the car up real good until I get the new leaf springs in. But it'll give me a chance to do some painting under there and work on that axle. I want that axle painted clean and de-rusted as much as I can. I might even, I don't know, I may wind up taking the rear hanger down too and de-rust it and paint it. I mean, I've got quite a while to do this, so I'm under no stress, no time constraints, none of that stuff. So that's it for today. I'm freezing my buns off here. I'll show you on the computer what I was talking about by taking the hanger down. And the reason I'm doing a lot of these, going into detail on a lot of this stuff is a few of our subscribers have purchased a 1966 Thunderbird. One of them overseas in Australia. And if I figure I can help them out, what the heck, Why not? Just so you know what's been going on with this spring business, a quick overview again. This is the rear of the car, and this is the hanger at the rear of the car where we took that little strap off the shackle. And today the 4 bolts I took out were these 4 right here that hold that. This is the hanger that the spring comes down. It has a loop up there. Just to give you a little closer look here. Now here's a blow up of it, and the 4 bolt. Now this center bolt goes through the loop on the spring. There's the loop right there. The problem, the question is, well, why didn't I just take out that center bolt? Why did I have to take loose the entire hanger? Because this bolt here shows it has a head and a nut and a lock washer, which is right here, and it goes through the center and through the 2 bushings. And the problem is, the one on my Thunderbird, it doesn't look like this. It doesn't have a head and a nut and a lock washer. It has 2 threaded ends. And I could not get the bolt to hold still in any way. I couldn't get a tool up there to hold it still because it's through the center of the loop on the spring. And I couldn't get it to hold still so I could get the nut off of both ends. You can't, if you take it off of this end, you can't get the thing out because it hits the frame or the body of the car. This is really up close. You only have about a 1/2 inch clearance here. And so this one would not come off. So I could go this way with it. So I had no choice but to go ahead and remove the entire front hanger. But that's okay. It needs to be de-rusted anyway. But just to kind of give you an idea of what I was doing today. If you ever have occasion to take these, if you have a 66 T-Bird or even probably even a 64 or 65, I'm not sure. Take out the top bolts first, the ones closest to the underbody of the car, to the floorboard. And that way, they're very difficult to see, very difficult to get to. So get them out of the way first, because when you, and then if you take off one here, later, this little hanger will have a tendency to kind of jack to the left or jack to the right, and it makes it really tight against the remaining bolt that you have left after you get the 3 out. And it's a whole lot easier to straighten up the bolt here and jack it up a little bit where you can see what you're doing to get that bolt, that final bolt clear. But when you're trying to see up above here, it's very, very difficult to do. So it can be done, but it's a pain. Take the 2 top ones out, then remove the 2 bottom ones. Goes a whole lot easier, a whole lot faster. Our first spring is out. What a piece of cake it turned out to be. It is a little bit of work, but no big deal. Okay, let's go over a few parts on this spring. I'm gonna, after I get done showing you a few parts here, I'm just gonna go ahead and remove the second spring, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up the video. But there is a website, or a channel rather. There's a channel on YouTube I want to recommend to you. I'll cover that at the end of the video, but let's take a look what we have here. Now this is the hanger I've been wrestling those 4 bolts with. See, pretty hefty little thing, big sucker, and this bolt here will have to come out. In order to remove the leaf spring, I need to reuse the hanger and the bolt. Maybe, I don't know, I may look around and come up with a bolt that just has a head on one end and a nut on the other. This stupid thing had a let me spin it around here, see if we can get it clear of the car. This thing here had see, it had a nut on each side, which was kind of dumb because I couldn't get this one off. The car body was right there, and every time I tried to hang on to it, the whole bolt would spin when I took this one off. So it was just a big waste of time putting something like that in here. I'm going to come up with something different. I hope probably have to be a hardened steel bolt. I don't know. We'll worry about that later. Now in the center here, now keep in mind, like I said, this is the hanger. This is not your shackle. This is the hanger. The shackle is at the other end, and I'll show you that in a few seconds. The other end hooks to the rear of the car. This is the rear of the car, right here, right where that support is. These are your mounts. This thing here divides into 2 pieces actually. If you can see here, it's separated in the middle, and it has a rubber block on the top and one on the bottom also. Those are called center cushions, or center rubber blocks, whatever you want to call it. So this will be separated, and we'll put brand new ones in. We'll soak these and get all the rust off as much as we can. These can really play havoc. These 2 bolts here, holes there, and on the other side over here, that's where the U-bolts went in. Now in the book they don't call them U-bolts, they call them spring clips. Spring clips. Never heard them called that before. But anyway, this will come off. This will be separated and come off, and we're going to have to put new bushings. In the new spring comes with no bushings, so we're going to, by bushings I mean rubber bushings. Boy, this puppy is heavy. I'll tell you what. I remember one I took out of a '57 Chevy one time. A couple of them actually, both sets, or the set, and it was heavy, but not as heavy as this. But anyway, these rubber bushings will have to be changed. And there's bushings at the other end also that'll have to be changed. So I'll be ordering those also. They're not that expensive, fortunately. Not yet, anyway. But these rubber mount things here, top and bottom, they can really play havoc with the torque of your U-bolts later on. Because you torque your U-bolts up to 45, 50 pounds, whatever it calls for in your manual. And if you have these kinds of rubber things, eventually they begin to collapse. I mean, it's rubber. Over time, it's going to collapse. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time to do that. And when they collapse, it causes a slack where your U-bolt goes over it. So therefore, it messes up your torque. You got to get down here and retorque them. And the flatter they get, every once in a while, you got to get under there and check the torque of those U-bolt nuts. case somebody doesn't know that. And I'd say after installing these things, after a couple of 100 miles, I'll have to recheck the torque. And of course, getting them back in is a whole lot harder than taking them out, trust me. But I'm going to try to make it as easy as I can. Okay, on to the next spring. Another job completed. Closer and closer to getting this thing on the road. Of course, that was the easy part, like I said. Now, next time, I'm going to cut the video off here. I'm kind of worn out. Next time, we'll tear apart all the pieces that need to come off of here. And then we'll put the springs in the back of my old pick-em-up truck. I know a fella that might want them to make knives. He likes to use a leaf spring steel to make knives. So, you know, what the heck, rather than throw them away. If he wants them, he can have them. If he doesn't, that's fine. The axle will come out next time. We'll get that baby out from under there and give us lots of room. And there's two other things I want to cover before we cut the video off. Well, actually three things. This job, you know, it was a one-man job, but I want to talk to you one more time about safety. You can do, if you choose to do these kinds of things, you have to think safety 200% of the time, not 100%. One slip, you know, and there goes a leg, there, maybe your life, you know, maybe a finger goes off or a hand or something. Safety. I had 6 ways from Sunday, as I showed you, to hold the car up. If you don't think that's enough and you want 12 ways, then do it. It doesn't matter. If you want 25 ways to hold that car up, that you're working on, do it, okay? Just don't even think about it. Just do it until you feel safe. You got to kind of be obsessive about that. I am. Okay, if you got nothing out of this video except the fact that you should work safely and take your time, then that's good. I'm a happy camper if that's all you got. Next time we'll go ahead, like I said, we'll take off these hangers. We'll take these things apart here. And that'll be about it. I'll show you what's in the inside. The second thing I wanted to cover was, I was down at Walmart the other day and I saw something that was so cool I had to buy it. It was an impulse buy. I don't do a lot of impulse buying. You know, I'll size something up and check it out. And now it was kind of an impulse to buy this, but the price was so good I couldn't turn it down, even though it was probably more than I ever thought I'd pay for a car. But I saw this tool. Walmart brand tools are called Hyper Tough. Now, would I fill up my toolbox with them? No. Everything comes from Walmart brand type stuff, great value and everything is usually substandard in my opinion. But anyway, this one thing I couldn't turn it down. It's a ratchet. A ratchet. Well, what's the big deal about a ratchet? Well, there are times when I'm leaning over the engine and I can't quite reach a bolt or a nut that I need to crack loose, and it's hard to get from underneath, but I can get it from the top. If I only had a long enough ratchet, it's just maybe another 2 inches, and I could get it. And same thing, sometimes I'll be under a car and you're reaching out and you're reaching and reaching and you've reached as far as you can go without jacking the car up, and you just can't get to that nut or that bolt that you need to get to. Just a little longer reach is what you need. So this is why I bought this thing. Check this out. You pull this collar down and it releases. Whoops. The last thing I want you to do is I want you to check out a channel. I think someone had mentioned this channel once before, and I never did get around to checking it out until just, I don't know, last month and a half maybe. The kid's name, he's a good kid. He's a Mopar man for all of you guys who like Mopar. Dylan McCool. I want you to, that's the name of his channel. Dylan McCool with a space between the two names. I want you to type it in, look him up. Watch some of his videos. He's currently working on a Dodge Dart and a 68 Dodge Charger, which is kind of cool that he drove all the way to Oklahoma to get and back. Hours and hours of driving with a friend of his. So check that young man out. I like him. I like it. I like the way he presents himself. I like the way he presents his videos. Make that happen. So that's it for now, guys. We have accomplished our task. Today the temperature is supposed to be about 67, 68 degrees, which is nice. It's almost already there. You can see it's nice and sunny out here today. Tomorrow is supposed to be 62. So I may come out and start this. After that, the temperature drops down into the 40s. So I may come out and tear this apart tomorrow and do a video on it. It might be a short little video. I don't know. Or I may get real energetic and go ahead and take out the rear end at the same time. Until next time, hope you enjoyed it. This is John.